Hi everyone. We're going to continue our discussion about Arraylist. So in the previous lecture, we learned about the methods of Arraylist, such as add, set, remove, get, and size. So in this lecture, we're going to be learning about how to manipulate an Arraylist using the loop and then a few other things. So as you can see right here, we have an array list of type string. It's called names, and I added 10 names. Now so this, let's assume these are students. Also, I'm going to create another array list for their grades. Array list, integer, grades, new array list, integer. And I'm going to assign a random grades between 50 and 100. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the loop. So here from 0 all the way to 10. So I'm going to generate a random value between 50 and 100. And then I'm going to add it to the list, to the array list grades. So first, let me declare a variable rand. And then since we are generating a random integer, I have to cast it to integer. Math.random. So math.random, we're going to multiply by the range. What is the range? The range is the list of numbers to pick from. So here we have the minimum is 50, the maximum is 100. So to find the range, you need to use the formula maximum minus minimum plus 1. So 100 minus 50 plus 1, that's 51. And then you specify the starting value, which is 50. So this will generate a random number between 50 and 100 inclusive. And then once I get that number, I'm going to add it to the grades list. So rand. Of course, since they are random values, every time you run the program, you will see different values between 50 and 100. So let me print grades. Let's just see how they look like. If I run the program, I'm gonna get, so as you can see, like random values, 87, and all of them are between 50 and 100 because we specified the lowest and the highest value. So if I run the program again, I'm gonna get totally different values. See that? Okay. So now we have both array lists. Now let's create some methods. And then we're going to call these methods in the main method using these two array lists. So let's say, for example, the first method counts the number of failing students. Okay. So it's going to be public static integer, that's the return type. I'm going to put failing students. So it accepts an array list. Array list of type integer. I call it R. So I need a variable count to keep track of how many students are failing. And I'm going to use the loop. So let's use the enhanced loop. So we have integer, then we both int or integer, so both of them will work. So, and then I'm going to use the variable num, and then in R. So how do we know the student is failing? If he got a grade less than 70. So if num is less than 70, then we are going to increment the variable. And then at the end, we're going to return it. Okay, so this method will return the number of students who are failing. Now let's call the method using the list grades. So here I'm going to put here the list, the number failing students is, and then I'm going to call the method failing student that accept grades. So run the program. So it's going to show us the list of grades. So remember, these are random values. So every time I run the program, I'm going to get a totally different answer. So 67 is failing, 68, 59, and 67. So there are 4 people who are failing based on the example that we have. Okay, so it looks like a method is working. Okay, so let's create another method that returns the name of the students with the highest grade, grade. So it's going to be something like public static string, that's the return type, and then I'm going to put name high grade. And it accepts both array lists, integer and strings. So I'm going to put array list string. Okay, let's say R1, and then array list of type integer R2. Okay, so we need 2 variables. One variable to keep track of the highest grade, and then another variable of type string to keep track of the name of the students. So string, let's say high n. Let's assume that the first students R1 that gets 0 is the name of the person with the highest, just a starting point. For the integer, for the high grade, we're going to assume it is 0, or the first one, doesn't matter. Yeah, we can put R2 get 0. That means we're assuming that the first student has the highest grade. And then I'm going to use the loop. We can also use the enhanced loop. So I'm going to put here for int mostly use the traditional loop. So I equals 0, I less than R1, since they have the same length, so it doesn't really matter which one you use, R1 or R2, that's size, I plus plus. And then we're going to compare or look for the highest grade. So I'm going to put here if R2, okay, that get I, it's higher than high grade, then we need to do 2 things. Save the value high g equals R2 that get I, and also save the name. So high n should be R1 that gets I. And then at the end, we're going to return high name. So let me build it, make sure there's no error, cannot find symbol. So R1 high n, n is capitalized. But Java is case sensitive, so okay. So now let's call the method using this example here. So I'm going to put here the name of students with highest grade is, and then I'm going to call the method name high grade accepts 2. The first one is string, which is names, and then grades. So let me run the program. Now, since the values are random, so every time I run the program, it's different. So here you can tell that 100 is the highest grade. Now, what is the name of the students before the last one? So if I go back, so here the last one is Monica, the one before the last one is David. So here it says David because that's the one, is the student who got the highest grade. Okay, now let's create another method. Okay, so let's create a method that returns a list of students who got A. Let's say I want to keep track of the students who got A. I want to add them to a separate list. Okay, so in this case, we're going to have public static. So the return type now is array list because you want to put them in a separate list of type string because you want to put the names, their names. So you can call it A students. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to accept two array lists, type string R1 and array lists integer R2. So now I have to create the new array list. So array list, I'm going to call it A students. Type string. The name is A students. So new array lists. Now I have the array list. It's empty, of course. So then I'm going to add the A student. So first I need to use the loop so I can traverse the entire array list and then check if the student has A. So loop y less than R1 dot size. Now check the condition. What's the condition here? If R2, because I'm checking the grade, I'm going to use R2. So here in the loop, it doesn't really matter whether you use R1 dot size or R2 dot size because they have the same length. The number of names is the same number as the number of grades. So here it doesn't really matter. I can use R2 for both, but it doesn't really matter. So now if R2 that get I is higher or equal than 90, that's how do I know? That's how I know that the student got A. If he got a grade higher or equal than 90, then I'm going to add his name. So A students dot add, but I'm going to add the name. So I'm going to use R1 that get I. Because R1 keeps track of the names of the students. So I'm going to add his name and then make sure you return the list A students. Okay. Now let's call the method here using this example. Okay, so I can put, for example, here the list of A students. And then call the method A students, or what's the name of the A students? Yeah, A students. So it accepts names, the arrays of type string, and then grades, which is the list of their grades. When I run the program, it should return the list of students who got A. So let's check. So run the program. Now this is the list of grades. Let's check. So we have 100. That's the second student who got 100. And it looks only one student, John, which is the second student who got A. All right. So let's run the program one more time. So I'm going to get the different values and see. So here we have more than one student. We have 98 here. And then we have 94. So two students, Maria and David. Okay, run one more time. So here we have 95, 99. Okay, a little bit more. That's 3 students, John, Steve, and Joe. So it looks like it is working. Okay. Now for the last thing we're going to do is, let's say we're going to create a method that removes the failing students. Removes the names and grades of failing students. Okay, so we're gonna have public static void. So void because we're just gonna remove the students, but we don't return anything. So remove failing students. So it accepts both array lists, string R1 and array list integer R2. I'm going to use the same loop, because they have the same size. So I equals 0, I less than R2, that's size, and then I plus plus. I'm going to put the condition here. If R2 that gets I is less than 70, that's how I know the student is failing. So two things will be happening. So the student's name will be removed from the first list names, and then his grade or her grade will be removed as well. So I'm going to put here R1 that remove I, and then R2 that remove I. Okay. Now let's call the method here. So let's call the method here. What's the name? Failing students. And then it accepts names and grades. And then I'm gonna print both of them names so I can see the impact after the remove. After removing the failing students. Okay. So let me run the program and see. Okay, it looks like I have a error here. Okay, method for instance cannot be applied to type. So failing students, not failing students, remove. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to call them remove, not failing. Remove failing students. Then it accepts names and grades. Okay, now let's run the program and see. Now this is the list of the grades. So you can tell from here that the second student, he got 53, he will be removed. Also 65 and 62. And then that's it. But here, 87, 97, 62 is still there. So why 62 is still there? So this is happening because of the shifting issue. Because when you remove one student, the student next to him or the grade next to the removed element will shift, so it's going to escape. It's not going to be removed. So every time you have two elements that are supposed to be removed, the first one will be removed, but the second element will shift, so it's not going to get removed. So that's why to fix this problem, we have two choices. Either you're going to put I minus minus here. So when you remove, see here, even when you remove, you put minus minus. So you can put here I minus minus. So this will solve problem. That's one way. Let's try it. You can go back and then remove the element that you missed, as you can see right here. Or another choice, if you don't want to put I minus minus, you can start from the end. So you're going to start from, not from the beginning, you're going to start from the end. So let's say R1, that's size minus 1, I higher or equal than 0, I minus minus. I prefer this, okay? So here, when you run the program, so this happens only when you have two elements side by side. So let's see if we have this situation here. So 56 is removed. So we're not going to have that situation here. Let's run the program again. So we're going to have that situation if you have two, like here it's going to happen. So 56 and 58. So because we changed the code, so now both of them are removed. Actually, three of them, side by side. 56, 58, 68, and 68, okay? And then also 59 and 51 will be removed. So just be careful when you use the remove method. Make sure that you are aware of the shifting issue, because when the element shifts, then it will escape being removed. So to solve that problem, either use I minus minus after F or inside F, or, which the approach I prefer, is use the loop but starting from the end, like going backward. So this will solve the problem. Okay, so this is an example how to use the array list and then how to manipulate the array list. So I hope you find this useful. So thank you for watching and see you on the next lecture.